You might think only jungles and oceans hide eerie secrets, but some of the most unsettling discoveries are found right in our cities. From an abandoned nuclear missile base to a terrifying find by a 12-year-old girl, here are 20 creepiest things discovered by urban explorers. Number 20. An abandoned World War II fortress hideout through a sewer pipe. The only way into this Napoleonic-era building is through an extremely narrow and dangerous old sewer pipe. These urban explorers are dedicated to their goal, though. After psyching themselves out for a little bit, they gathered the nerve to head into the claustrophobia-inducing tunnel, crawling on their hands and knees for some distance until they reach an improbably narrow-looking pipe. I don't know about you, but the prospect of lying there, squeezed and stuck in place Winnie the Pooh style, is enough to give me palpitations from here at my desk. So, these urbexers are either mad, just brave, or made of some sort of rather unusual stuff. Would you go through this pipe just to see a broken old building on the other side? Especially when the only way back is to come through the pipe again. Anyway, what they do find on the other side of the long tunnel and horribly tight tube is a carbon copy of the building they were previously in, albeit without all the graffiti and vandalism. It is a Napoleonic War-era fortress with, rather bizarrely, a whole bunch of urinals and not much else to see. Well, it does take all sorts, doesn't it? Number 19. Found working nuclear bunker with vehicles and gear. This urban explorer has outdone themselves. This is such an incredible find. Eastern Europe is absolutely littered with Cold War residue. Some of it is in better condition than others, but this bunker is totally remarkable. It seems to be an underground vehicle storage facility, as well as containing plenty of stores and supplies for the anticipated nuclear attack. There are masses of crates containing gas masks of various sorts and endless posters and informational pages about the impact and aftereffects of a nuclear bomb. The huge facility is a mashup of the historic command bunker with all the plans and communications equipment and a general storage space. It's incredibly intact, with all the buttons, dials, and switches from a bygone era. It's creepy because of what it represents, but the place itself, well, it's oddly bright and has that functional but cozy institutional vibe that the Soviet Union tended to include in their offices and such. There's a lot of wood and stuff painted in mustard yellow, which would no doubt be the most soothing thing when you were living out the end of days in a hole underground. Number 18. Found cave underneath abandoned house. In a very quiet, oddly untouched abandoned 19th century house, this explorer finds a cave hidden beneath the building. The whole place is in pretty poor shape, with all the fixtures and fittings either gone or in a state of total disrepair. But the solid stone walls of the property have remained intact. Let's check out upstairs. Actually, let's finish these living rooms. The house is hewn from some sturdy rock that will no doubt outlive the rest of the structure, even as the wooden parts are slowly rotting away and crumbling back into the earth. The cave, although the guy says it smells really bad, has crystal clear water filling most of it and doesn't appear to be stuffed full of hideous monsters or even zombified creatures or anything that you would anticipate in a hidden cave under an old abandoned home. More's the pity. Even so, he walks through the house and also peeps gingerly into the cave, and he keeps on saying how bad it all smells. This, in and of itself, is probably enough to put off the most sensible of humans. Bad smells usually mean something bad inside, and you know this place is crammed with all kinds of toxic mold and deadly dust. Number 17. Hiker in the woods stumbles upon dozens of missing person posters. Is this one of the creepiest things we've seen so far? Or perhaps it's just a set for a low-budget student horror movie. Who can really say? At face value, this is, in fact, an area deep in the woods at Long Island's Berkeley-Jackson County Park, with dozens of missing persons posters stuck to the trees. Oh, and for good measure, there's also a nasty-looking blanket and a weird structure made of branches all lashed together in a distinctly spooky way. Now, if you were out roaming all alone and happened upon this scene, it would almost certainly give you the wiggins, so you can't really blame the guy for making a swift exit and, well, totally freaking out. It does seem sensible, after all. But his claim that it was the site of a bunch of crime stuff and that the police were currently investigating seems a little far-fetched. It's just as likely that somebody else set the whole scene up to film it for an exploration video on the old YouTube. What do you reckon? Number 16. Abandoned nuclear anti-ballistic missile base. In the back of Beyond in Nakoma, North Dakota, there's a relic of fear and loathing that was the Cold War. In the 1960s, the USA and the USSR were locked in furious ideological one-upmanship. Oh, and they both had nuclear warheads pointed at each other, just for added tension. One side would send a dog to space, the other would send two. Then one would get a big pointy missile, and the other would make a big pointy missile catcher. That sort of thing was essentially what these two superpowers were busy doing throughout those dangerous years, when it seemed that the leaders of the world were hell-bent on destroying it. So, the USA built a big pointy missile catcher, or, to give it its correct name, a nuclear anti-ballistic missile. The Stanley R. Mikkelsen Safeguard Complex was built to shoot down any oncoming Russian intercontinental ballistic missiles. It housed a huge complex of missile silos, a gigantic radar system, and a backscatter radar that would track missiles from Russia and shoot them down over Canada. Oh, lucky Canada. Free missiles. I'm sure they would have been delighted about that. This colossal anxiety farm cost a staggering $6 billion, and for the most part, people didn't even think it would actually work, not to mention their insane plan of basically bombing Canada off the map in the process. So, this crazy money pit was fully operational for a mind-blowing 3 days before it was shut down and left to rot. What remains should be a reminder of the insanity of such conflict, but do we ever really learn from history? What do you all think? Let's have a serious natter about humanity's insanity in the comments down below. Number 15. Creepy clown at abandoned carnival graveyard. While this clown is clearly suffering from some really bad lighting and a major location issue, nobody could possibly look their very best given these terrible conditions. The location is that of a yard packed full of old and broken, or at least abandoned, funfair rides and machines. It's quite a collection as well. This is where fairgrounds go when they die, and since fairgrounds always have just a sprinkling of menace when they're in their fully functioning, fairy lights sparkling midsummer glory, that sense of the sinister is only going to increase if you make a big pile of old, broken funfair rides next to a motorway in the UK and leave nature to run its course. The slow weathering of these old things has done little to make them more attractive, and these urban explorers make themselves jump a few times as they rummage through the unusual place on a freezing cold and very wet afternoon. Don't say that people don't know how to have fun in Britain. Number 14. A haunted, abandoned 1800s castle in the woods. This 19th century castle in the woods is clearly a very popular destination for many wall-dobbying hooligans, of which the classic artworks that decorate every wall are a testament. Ah, the wit and elegance of their work. It's quite something to behold. This group of urban explorers had sought to have a little poke around this long-abandoned, castle-shaped house from the 1800s. But as they ventured into the woods, they saw loads upon loads of signs nailed to all the trees that warned them against trespassing. Being good, law-abiding urbexers, they then decided to head into the local town and do a little research into their target location. So, they tracked down the owner of the property, asking for permission to go inside and film. Well, that's disappointing. It does take the spooky edge off of everything a little bit. However, they do get to go and have a good look around without the stress of hiding from security guards. If the rumors are to be believed, this place is actually haunted. But in the bright sunshine of the footage, it's hard to imagine it being such a scary place after all. Number 13. Kids' shoes and bones found in abandoned mine. Rummaging around in any kind of mine is not an especially pleasant experience. Just the idea of being deep underground in the darkness, with the possibility of getting lost or even trapped, isn't exactly a jolly afternoon's outing. However, if you add to that the discovery of a whole bunch of creepy things inside the old mine, then it makes it a whole lot creepier indeed. This is the McCoy mine in Nevada, and a group of explorers is very quietly and carefully making their way through the space, so quiet as to not cause vibrations that may loosen any rocks. Then they come across a huge pile of shoes. As if that were not terrifying enough, there are also bones mixed in with the shoes. This clearly disturbs the explorers, yet they decide to continue even deeper into the mine, where they discover yet more bones and more shoes. It is when they realize that all the shoes are children's sizes that they get really quiet and then decide to get out of there. And who can blame them? Seriously, what the actual heck is going on here? This is some messed up stuff. Number 12. A Colton mine in the Democratic Republic of Congo. This is definitely an extremely sinister discovery, but it seems as though an intrepid investigative news team uncovered it rather than any urban explorer types. There's a pretty big difference between these two types of investigations, so it's important to recognize that these people are doing professional journalism at significant risk rather than poking around some old abandoned buildings and hiding from the occasional security guard. This video reveals the dark and dangerous hidden secrets behind our obsession with technology, showing a Colton mine. Colton is short for columbite tantalites, also known simply as tantalite. This is the metallic core that contains elements niobium and tantalum. Tantalum is most highly valued as it's used to manufacture tantalum capacitors, essential components in mobile phones, computers, cameras, and electronics in cars. In fact, most of our modern lives rely on the technology facilitated by this element. So, guess what? Where there is demand, there is, of course, money to be made. Somebody is going to exploit it, and in this case, it's some of the poorest and most vulnerable people in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The conditions in which the miners work are dangerous, cramped, and potentially deadly. There are gases that can cause asphyxiation, as well as the longer-term risks of breathing in these particles. There are now allegedly measures in place to ensure ethical mining practices. Well, right on then. Number 11. Creepy doll found in cave. There's a distinctly suspect trend for explorers to discover items that make especially creepy images when they're out there doing their thing. A more skeptical person might imagine that the discovery of such items, so conveniently and artfully positioned in almost every location, is just the tiniest bit suspicious. But I'm sure there's no way that anyone would take props to a location and dress the scene just to make it spookier for all the clicks and likes. Now, is there? And it's not just the odd doll or mannequin. Sometimes entire rooms seem perfectly curated for maximum spook factor, as if they've been waiting for an Instagram post to bring them back to life. I mean, it's not like people are trying to turn urban exploration into some kind of haunted house production for social media fame, right? It does make you wonder, though, when the same dusty dolls, eerie mannequins, and conveniently placed toys seem to appear in every spooky exploration. The level of coincidence can be eyebrow-raising, especially when these supposed abandoned locations look more like carefully set stages. This doll, for instance, supposedly found in a cave, is absolutely legit and completely naturally just hanging out there because of previous creepy events rather than any kind of staging whatsoever. But hey, who's counting the odds here? Number 10. Sewer creature spotted. You should always check the date when you're looking at a video about a mysterious creature, like this one. Yes, this was an April Fool's Day joke by the hilarious people at the Liverpool Echo from all the way back in 2011. But as far as pranks go, this one has all the fun stuff. It's even got excellent footage that you're enjoying on a loop right now. The cheeky story went like this. The Liverpool newspaper revealed exclusive CCTV footage of the sewer creature that they dubbed Messi, a play on the Loch Ness Monster's name, Nessie. They claimed that the footage showed a genuine living creature of unknown species allegedly lurking in the sewers below Merseyside. They then suggested that the public should be on the lookout for the mystery creature and even made a hilarious joke about how it was the most exciting thing to have happened since they discovered red herrings. Oh, the wit of the local newspaper. What do you think of this footage? Would you have been fooled? And what do you think about newspapers that get involved in pranking the public? Let's have a lovely discussion about it in the comments down below. I know you'll all have lots of excellent thoughts. Number 9. Found human remains and natural spring in underwater gold mine. Well, here we are with a swift change from daft to sinister. We over here at the Fancy Banana certainly do keep you on your toes, don't we? Whatever will we have in store next? Oh, excellent, human remains, just what we all wanted to stumble across. So yes, this is certainly one of the creepiest things found by Internet Explorer types, at least in theory. The video was shot by the YouTuber known as Man Would Be, filmed in Riverside County, California. He explains that the legend of the place is that gold was discovered there in the 1800s, but as they began to dig it out, the mine began to fill up with water, which, as you know, is a fairly serious impediment to mining for gold. I'm just fighting to get back out of here. The intrepid rabbit man then gets stuck in and goes headfirst into the mine, as one does. The water appears to be about a foot deep, and there are a few things scattered in the crystal clear water. The no-nonsense rabbit man wades straight in, dismissing the fake plastic bones, and gets deeper into the water with enormous excitement. The plastic bones float on the surface, and he has a good poke around, concluding that this is the point where the miners hit a natural spring and then abandon the mine. He's convinced there's still gold to be discovered, though. Number 8. Machine gun, explosives, and bullets in a secret underground factory. And for our next creepy jaunt into urban exploration territory, we have yet another fun Eastern European adventure for your eyeballs. Lucky old you. This time we're headed to Albania to peruse a big heap of old weaponry dating back to the communist era of the Soviet Union. Such fun. These urbexers introduce us to Albania as the country with the most underground bunkers in the whole world, claiming 750,000 in total. But that does seem a bit silly, really, for a country with a population of just 2.83 million. What could you possibly need all that underground stuff for? And how does the entire country not simply cave in and turn into a giant sinkhole from all that tunneling? These are just a few of the questions I have, and I know you inquisitive people will have plenty more. Anyways, the footage captures an entire Cold War-era underground munitions factory, complete with a whole bunch of discarded weaponry. The experience is made all the creepier by the fact that the explorers have to climb through a tiny hole in the wall in the dead of night and whisper to keep from being discovered. It's a distinctly sinister place, as it would be, designed to produce death-dealing gear all through one of the darker moments of Europe's history. The sheer scale of this factory is enough to give you the willies. It's enormous and must have produced vast quantities of guns and ammunition, all in secret from this hidden underground location. and, everything looks creepier in Torchlight and Action Cam, or is it just me haunted by the Blair Witch Project? Number 7. Abandoned Australian Wildlife Park. An abandoned wildlife park that has long been emptied of all the exhibits has since been reclaimed by another kind of wildlife. Possums have overrun the site, taking up residence in the buildings and structures around the place, using the entire area as a personal toilet facility. Oh, how lovely! The things these explorers are willing to paddle through so we can poke around via the magic of the internet. At least we can't smell the place. Judging from the milk that still sits inside the fridge this place has been abandoned since 2016. Since then, rodents and vermin of all descriptions have taken over. The place is a biohazard. As if that wasn't creepy enough, they then stumble across a shark in a tank, hidden in the dark amongst old arcade games and heaps of junk. The shark grins out from the cloudy formaldehyde gloom. They then discover that it was a 16-foot-long great white shark that had been caught in fishing nets in 1998 and taxidermied and preserved in a custom-built tank of formaldehyde. Well, obviously, why wouldn't it be? I just can't believe nobody's lugged it home to adorn their living room with it. Number 6. UFO House of Mysteries found in Japanese forest. Finally, some aliens. It's about time. Oh, hang on, though, it's not aliens. It's a 1960s UFO house hidden in a forest in Japan. Well, at least these urban explorers are excited about it. The UFO house is actually called Futuro. 40 of these were produced in the whole world, 18 of which remain, and 2 of those are currently in Japan. This particular Futuro house is a bit of a mystery. Nobody seems to know who really owns it or why it's in the forest at all. It's a good thing that a tenacious band of YouTube explorers are going to have a good go and nose around. Call me old-fashioned, but isn't that somebody's house right next to the UFO building? Isn't that essentially the same as breaking into your neighbor's garage? Or actually, maybe it's worse. Is it traveling to another country, creeping into someone's backyard, and then breaking into their private property, filming it and putting the whole crime on YouTube? Let's think about that for a moment. When is trespassing an issue? Does it not matter if it's interesting? Is personal property the same as an abandoned public building? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Number 5. The most religious abandoned house. Thousands of holy statues left behind. In this video, there's a huge mess of stuff that's been left behind in a house that's apparently no longer inhabited. It evidently belonged to an elderly person, and the things left behind are indicative of a person's life. Then it becomes clear that this home was where a hoarder lived, which is a mental disorder that destroys lives. Now, poking around old, empty, falling down homes is one thing, but there's something the tiniest bit odd about going into a home with all the contents intact. Sure, it may be abandoned, but it likely still belongs to somebody, and they may still be around. Plenty of different oil lamps are scattered around, so being sensitive to that should be a priority, or it just becomes plain old breaking and entering, doesn't it? Ethics of exploring aside, this guy discovered a home in the Netherlands where there's a massive collection of religious statues. Nothing to see here. It's absolutely not creepy in the least. Doesn't everybody have a lot of Virgin Mary statues at home? This footage shows just how far a collection of religious paraphernalia can actually go. There may be more religious items than all the gift shops in Vatican City, and that's really saying something. Number 4. Freaky puppets in Western Village. Now Japan, well, they're really good at theme parks, but they're even better at abandoned theme parks. This Wild West-themed amusement park is deep in the mountains in the middle of Japan and has long been left to the elements. A great deal of things are still intact. Most of the scenes inside the buildings are still set up. What's particularly eerie is how time seems to have stood still, with old ticket booths, rusting roller coasters, and fading signs all frozen in a ghostly limbo. There's also an extremely messed up ghost train that's complete with some of the creepiest models and puppets you've ever seen. The fact that these eerie remnants have been left untouched adds to the unsettling atmosphere, as if the park is simply waiting for its next visitors, who will never come. This is the stuff of nightmares. Just imagine the place in the dark. Everything is still in place, as there's apparently much less of a compulsion to vandalize anything left unattended in Japan. It's probably why there's so much opportunity for urban explorers to discover unusual places in that country. Apart from all the super creepy mannequins, because Japan is so good at those, there's some weird animal skin stuff going on which gives the place a proper sinister edge. But the entire abandoned theme park vibe is probably just enough to fuel some sleepless nights. Number 3. Saddle Ridge Horde Gold. A few years back, a couple was taking their usual walk on their property in Northern California when they happened upon an old tree growing on the side of a hill. On this occasion, They noticed there was a rusty old can dangling from the branches, and they decided to take a closer look. They imagined it was probably a marker of some kind, pondering somewhat creepily that it may have actually marked a grave. Well, this can did in fact mark the site, but they didn't stumble upon a load of dry bones. Nearby, there was a second can poking out of the ground, and so they gave it a bit of a waggle, as one does, and discovered that it was stuffed to the brim with 19th century gold coins. They then found out that there were no fewer than 7 more cans, all full of coins dating back to between 1847 and 1894. This buried treasure is believed to be the biggest haul ever discovered in the United States. Although the face value of the coins is around $28,000, coin nerds have estimated that the collection could eventually fetch more than $10 million when sold at auction. These homeowners must have been taken aback when they uncovered what is now known as the Saddle Ridge Horde. It's a wonder that they could even make heads or tails of it all. Number 2. Creepy statues invade abandoned Czech chapel. Now this one's a barrel of laughs, isn't it? Just what we all needed before getting tucked up in our beds for the night. An abandoned Eastern European church full of scary stuff. Well, I know I'll definitely sleep soundly after this one. I'm sure. Oh, Twinkle, cover your little guinea piggy eyes. It's just too horrible to watch. Known as the Church of the Ghosts, can't imagine why. This disused church in the Czech Republic is actually going to haunt me forever. The figures themselves, eerily draped in tattered white cloth, stand in solemn silence as though frozen in time, watching over the crumbling pews. What makes it even worse is that these ghostly figures seem to occupy every corner, as if they're waiting for someone, or something, to arrive. Imagine wandering into this abandoned church by accident, only to find yourself face to face with these haunting statues, each one more unsettling than the last. Throughout the already very creepy, tumbled-down church, there are white-shrouded, human-shaped, life-size figures. The place has been abandoned since the 1960s, but is still full of parishioners, or their ghostly forms. Anyway, what appears to be an art installation or a very bad joke has turned the interior of this holy building into a terrifying nightmare vision. Seriously, is anyone alright with this? Let's get some group therapy going in the comments below. I can never unsee these images. Now it's time for today's topic. Hannah, a 12-year-old from Columbus, Ohio, was searching for her beloved cat, Whiskers, when she stumbled upon a terrifying discovery. Peering into a storm drain near her home, she saw 2 yellow eyes staring back at her. To her horror, they belonged to a massive alligator trapped in the sewer. Hannah immediately screamed for help, and her neighbor, Brooke, rushed to her aid. Together, they called animal control, their voices trembling with fear and disbelief. The authorities arrived quickly and, with the assistance of professional trappers, managed to safely remove the alligator from the drain. The reptile, covered in bloody patches from its ordeal, was later transported to a wildlife rehabilitation center. The incident serves as a stark reminder of the potential dangers of encountering wildlife in unexpected places. Despite the risks, Hannah's bravery and the swift response of the community and animal control officials helped ensure a safe outcome for both the alligator and the local residents. Number 1. Abandoned biohazard hospital. It's not really all that often that the headline actually describes what's in the video. If anything, this particular headline undersells the true extent of this abandoned hospital. The entire building is one gigantic biohazard, and you should probably leave this place well alone. The explorers in this video head straight for all the usual favorites: the morgue, the laboratory, and the autopsy room, all that fun stuff. On this occasion, everything seems to have been left behind. All the patient files, which should have been removed for confidentiality reasons, were just discarded. There were piles upon piles of old blood slides, smashed and scattered around. Then there was something in a jar labeled biohazard, looking suspiciously like a human organ. It's all utterly delightful. Where there is most likely a body part inside this jar, the explorers rummaging about in this seething mass of old disease and nasty bodily bits were sensible enough to don masks and gloves when they realized that those biohazard warnings were 100% legit. It's hard to believe that these things were left behind, as if everyone involved in the hospital just wandered off with some sort of brain-eating amoeba or, at the very least, a severe bout of negligence. Most urban explorers have a strict code of practice, and it generally includes not breaking and entering, obviously, being respectful, causing no damage, and taking nothing away. So before you decide you want to go poking around somewhere, make sure your code is intact. Have you ever found anything really creepy out there? What did you make of all this scary stuff? Is it going to give you all those bad dreams? As always, let me know all about it in the comments below. Be sure to check out the other cool stuff showing up on the screen, and I'll see you next time.